Welcome to another episode of Indaba, the African Debate. My name is Mtutuzi Brian. As always, I have a guest with us, and today we'll be talking about. No. Today we'll be talking to an author. Exactly. You'll discover what the book is about and everything that entails the guest that we have with us today. Let's dive in.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Mabhena. I am a girl from Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. I am an author, and I am hoping to impact our community positively by empowering our children. I'm based in the UK at the moment. I'm studying to work more with children in the education sector. And my goal is to inspire as much children of African descent as I can.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Karen, for that introduction that you've given us today. Now, you're saying you're an author. Tell us a little bit more about the book. What inspired you about the book? What is it about? And, tell us more, just a little bit more about this book that you've written.
Yeah, sure. Nandi and Nzuri. It's one of the many books that will be out on the Nandi and Nzuri series. This one is called Nandi and Nzuri and the Ancient Stones. It's just basically about two African children. They go on an adventure and they stumble across some stone ruins, and those stone ruins take them somewhere. It takes them to Africa's ancient glorious past. And when they go there, they discover that Africa was advanced. Africa was great. Africa had the technology, and Africa, they were living peacefully and everything was good. So it was just about learning about the truth about Africa and its past. It has some hints of fiction or whatever, but there's some truth in it there, because the stones that they stumble across, they're there. They can be found there in South Africa, in Zaloelang and Mpumalanga. So that's what the story is mainly about. And what inspired me is an aspect of three things. I've always loved children from when I was young. My nephews, I used to take care of my nephews. And then I had my own children that took my love for children to a whole new level. And also my love for the mother continent. When I blended all those three things together, I was like, wait, hang on, okay. Now I know what I want to do. Now I know how I want to inspire children of African descent to take pride in who they are. So that's basically why this book came about. And it's more to it than just the books. It's something that I intend that children of African descent can identify with and be inspired by. So that's just a basic look at what I'm doing.
Now, one of the greatest things to happen over the past sort of 18 to 24 months, apart from COVID, obviously, is the rise of the BLM movement. And I think that it's very impactful, because what it then forced is it forced the Black narrative, it forced the African narrative, it forced us to really realize that representation of the Black faces, representation of the Black academics, authors, is somehow lacking, but they are there. So generally speaking, what's your perspective on representation of the Black Afro writers, Black Afro authors? What's their representation within the space? Have you realized that it's got better, or it hasn't got any better? And have you interacted with a few as you're writing the book?
I think when it comes to Black representation in literature, it's very important, because it then tells our story. History has been one-sided as we know it. Our story has been written by other people. But then when we take that and we change the narrative and we write our own story, it then impacts us, especially the little ones, because then they don't have to do as much hard work as we have. Like, I look at our generation. We went through the phase of, being taught what we were taught in institutions, which most of it was not correct. Now we had to do that hard work of researching, of finding out this and that. But now, if we take it upon ourselves, our generation, and we write our story, we narrate who we are, and more of us get to find out and we get to learn, it makes it easier for the next generation, that they don't have to go through that decolonization of the mind process and getting rid of the psychosis. We've done that for them. So when they then pick up from where we've left off, it then becomes almost guaranteed that the future is theirs, that African children can now decide what happens to Africa without any outside influence. So I believe when it comes to literature, there are a lot of people who are doing a lot of work. They just need to be more exposed and to be known out there. But I believe it's getting better as compared to 20, 30 years ago. There's more of us trying to write our story. It's just now about the exposure. It's about supporting one another and telling our story, because at the end of the day, it's our future, as a people of African descent and our continent as well. So more and more people should embark on this journey. And I believe a lot more people are doing it. So far, so good, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, the greatest thing that you say there for me was decolonizing the mind. I think it's ever so important that we move away from the colonial mentality of that we made things better for you, which is not necessarily the truth. I mean, I encounter a lot of people, whenever I do have a chance to have a chat with one or two people from Europe, specifically United Kingdom, there's a very strong narrative that we made things better for you, we changed things for you. And it's easy to fall into that mindset of, you know what, maybe it's true, maybe things were not that great. I mean, obviously, it was not all just great. There were challenges that were there, but the challenges were our very own challenges. They were Afrocentric challenges. When reading the book to your children, and when they read the book, did they enjoy it? And what were their comments to it?
They enjoyed it, because with children, it's about the images there and how they stand out, and they enjoyed seeing, because you don't really find it out there where you see children of African descent dressed in their traditional attire, and that really captivated them. They were like, oh, mommy, I want to dress like this. And the more I read it to them, and the more like African names that were there, the more the tribes were represented in that book, the more they felt like they were part of the story. They envisioned themselves. And after reading it to them, you'd see them playing it out, playing out the roles, like, okay, I'll be this character, I'll be that character. So it's that, the right representation. Take it to Africa, to the root. Let them wear, the traditional attire. Let us see that culture and let them be proud of it. That's why I included, there's themes of Afrofuturism in there, which it captivated them so much to think, oh, wait, okay, so there are smart cities in Africa. Africa can have things like, bullet trains and things like that, So it's mixing of the two and knowing that, Africa did have a glorious past, So it's that empowering imagery. Imagery is so important for kids. When they see the right image and it's empowering to them, it does something to them, gives them that confidence. So they enjoyed it, and it's about putting the right images there. For me, that was my goal, to put the right images.
That's very true. I mean, representation of the Black African child has somewhat been lacking over the past, I don't know how many centuries one can go back into. Representation in media, representation in literature, you name it. So I do suspect this is very powerful, and it gives them a campus, so to speak, to say, I am, I am valid. My dreams are valid. My Africanness is valid. And I think that's ever so important. Now, what I'll do as usual, guys, is I will drop down the links to all the social medias. I will drop down the links to the book. It's found in so many various bookstores, but we'll drop down some of the most common ones, such as Amazon. Now, slightly moving on, what are the biggest challenges that you've faced when you're writing the book? Embarking on this journey as an author, with all the other pressures that come with life, motherhood, studying. What are the challenges that you have faced?
My challenges have been having to manage all those aspects about myself, being a student, being a mom, and also homeschooling my own children. That there's that as well. And then having to write that story that will mean something to children. So having to manage and balance all of that, those demands that come from society. And then as well as I was writing it, that process that I had to go through to get here to write it, from, letting go of the psychosis, institutions have instilled on me, from various institutions, from even the educational, and also having to decolonize my own mind. It was such a long process that it just didn't start when I was writing the book. It started when I started to find myself. So having to write it in a way to make it to summarize all of that, all of those aspects, and then giving it to a child as one small piece. It's been something that has been quite the journey for me. I've learned a lot in the process, and it has what has brought me here. So it's just having to balance all of this at once, and having to, to still make a way and still do what you have to do, which is what I'm doing now, trying to change the narrative.
I honestly, I absolutely love the fact that you keep bringing up the word decolonizing the mind, because that is ever so important for us to be able to tell our own narrative, and most importantly, to pass our own narrative down to the next generation coming up. Our history is very oral. Our history has been narrated to us rather than written to us more often than not. So the fact that we are starting to sit down, write our own narratives, starting to sit down and transplant our own narratives to the upcoming generations is an amazing way of decolonizing not only the mind, but decolonizing Africa to a degree, because that way we're opening up to people being comfortable in their Blackness, comfortable in their Africanness, and comfortable in who they are, something that generally, we don't speak of that much. We're in the red race too much to even speak about that.
Exactly. And in this journey, I've realized, like, what's really important is not knowledge of self. When you know who you are, when you know where you come from, who you come from, you know where you're going. It's so important. Like you said, like, most of our history is oral. So time to time it gets passed down. Some things we end up forgetting. But the part where we are fortunate is when we look into our pre-colonial history. Like, when you look, I'm no expert at it, but I've read one or two things on things like ancient Egypt, things like Mapungubwe, things like that. And you're just like, this process of colonization has really damaged us to the point that things that are obviously there, that show that we are not what history says we are, we end up forgetting that, or we end up not knowing how to, to interpret what was put in stone for us. So it's really imperative that we break that cycle. It's really imperative that we teach ourselves, and definitely teach the next generation knowledge of self. Because once they have that knowledge of themselves, their future is bright.
Exactly. Speaking of the future, where to from here when it comes to Karen? Where to from here when it comes to the series of Nandi and Nzuri? Where to? What's the next chapter?
When it comes to Nandi and Nzuri, it will be a brand, basically. Yeah. But I've already started the Tales from Africa series. This Tales from Africa series, it's about engaging children in tackling global issues, and also finding African solutions to global issues. If we sit down with children are very wise. If we as adults just sit down with them and just listen, you find that they have a lot to contribute. So why not include them in this tackling global issues? I'll be, telling stories about marine life conservation, wildlife conservation, public health, human rights and justice, things like that, and educational development, things like that, where we can tell it to them in a way that they'll understand. Once they know about such issues, once they are taught such issues at a young age, and they grow with it, can you imagine the kind of solutions we'll have 15, 20 years from now from such minds? We have to start now.
Precisely. Just before we go, just to sort of catch you out a little bit. Do you think the way way parenting has worked in Africa has been beneficial to Africa. If you look at the traditional style of parenting, it almost says children should not have a voice till a certain point, and children should not sit at the table with adults till a certain point. This is me just being very general, by the way. Now, do you think that model of parenting has helped us when you contrast it to other models where children from a very young age are, taught to speak up for what they think about what they think, speak up for what they believe in, and given that voice? Do you think that needs to be changed, or our model is fine and we just need to refine it in parts?
This is just my take on it. I stand to be corrected.
Yes, it's a personal perspective.
Yeah,
Don't even worry.
but I feel like as the times move on, things changed. We were raised in that way that we couldn't contribute to any sort of conversations that adults were having, and most of our parents were very strict with us. And I'd like to think, maybe I'm being naive, but I'd like to think that a lot of us have turned out quite well, But as time carries on, as now we're in this new age, we're now in the beginning of a new digital age, things change, perceptions change, and certain trends change. So now we're seeing that, that old model of not engaging with children as much isn't quite working when it comes to the dynamics of today. So now by introducing children and engaging with them into this world that they live in this world, they need to know what's out there. So if we now engage them, if we now even get their points of view in certain issues, there is a lot that we can learn from each other. So I believe when it comes to a style of parenting, as the times are changing, we should then adjust to those changes in time and involve them more, let them become more involved in global issues, and especially African children, as they are the future. And I believe they're the leaders of tomorrow. They need to know what is going on, and they need to know how to tackle issues. So I'm for engaging children in adult conversations.
Definitely. And more so when you add the stat that Africa is the youngest continent. There's a whole lot more young people in Africa than anywhere else in the world. And there's just too many young people. So we need to get them engaged, and we need to get our narrative out there. Karen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you ever so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an honor.
Brilliant. Her name is Karen. I am Duduzi Brian. This is Indaba, the African Debate. It's clear that literature will be one of the best ways in decolonizing the mind. We start now. The journey continues. Nandi and Nzuri and the Ancient Stories is out now. I'll post the link below. If you're on Spotify, the link will still be there as well. So please do check it out. The debate does continue. Goodbye for now. Thank you.